Lighten up, yes. How many could stand to lighten up? You ever feel that way? I have been feeling that way. I don't know, a couple of people have said, you look really tired, are you okay? And it's just been a rough couple of months here, but so it was a timely message. And we had Marion Head here last week talking about revolutionary agreements. How many of you were here for that? Do you remember the last one? It was to lighten up, exactly. I thought, there's my cue. I know what I'm going to talk about next Sunday. And so, yeah, there's been lots going on. I don't know about all of you, but I know there's lots going on in my life. There's lots going on, you know, politically, communally, everything. It's just crazy. And I think we all could stand to lighten up a little bit. Yeah. So I was actually at a workshop. How many of you know of the IHMC? Are you familiar with that name? Yes. The IHMC. It's housed in what used to be the library, for those of you who've lived in Ocala for a while. Mm-hmm. And it actually is internationally known, if you can imagine. In our little town of Ocala, we have this place called the IHMC, which stands for Institute for Human and Machine Cognition. And they talk about robotics, and they do research, and just all kinds of stuff. So they had a really great speaker I was invited to listen to this week. And she's a professor from University of Florida, and she is a mental health professional. She's a psychiatrist, actually. So she helps the students there with, you know, having mental health issues, and they're doing lots of studies. And it was really interesting to hear some of the statistics that came out of her talk. About 1 in 4 college students now are suffering from mental illness. 1 in 4, a quarter of the kids that are in college now, statistically speaking, have mental illness. And this is from an article I read in Psychology Today, as I started doing lots of research on this. And it says in the 1980s, at any given point, perhaps 1 in 10 college students could readily be characterized as needing, wanting, or using some form of mental health treatment. Now the number is 1 in 3, with the trend rising. They're saying, in fact, that maybe it's not really a crisis, that maybe it's just the new normal, which I refuse to accept that. Here's how it breaks down. I have to get a little closer to see. 50% of students received no education on mental health issues before getting into college. 50% of students are rating their mental health as below average or poor. Half of students are saying their mental health is poor or below average. 30% report problems with schoolwork due to mental health issues. 1 in 7 are reported in being engaged in abnormally reckless behavior. 1 in 3 reported prolonged periods of depression. 1 in 4 students, 1 in 4, a quarter, are having suicidal thoughts. And only 7% of parents report their students, their children, as having experienced mental health issues.
And I think it's important to point out that those aren't just children. So this is not just a young age thing. There's a lot more variety in the age of college students now. So that means all ages, all, across all kinds, all borders.
Great. For anyone who didn't hear Christina, she said a really important thing to notice about these numbers is that this is not just referring to kids from, 18 to 22. This is going across the board, because there are lots of people that go back to college as they're, becoming as adults, in their 40s and 50s. So, and that was actually a point that I was going to make. What's going on? What is this about? So some people are saying that, well, it's not that there's more problems, it's just that people are more likely to seek help than they used to be. That's one school of thought. Now, statistically speaking, that really is not bearing out. There are others who are saying that general levels of well-being and happiness in our country as a whole, across age demographics, are decreasing, as evidenced by higher suicide rates, more substance abuse, increases in stress, depression, anxiety, and loneliness. And I think the last time I looked at a full quarter of our population, at least a quarter, maybe a third, I don't know, is taking medication for depression and anxiety. It's an issue. It's a real issue. So we're wondering, what is this? What is causing this? Where is this coming from? Now, as far far as the college students go, there's a thought about it being the result of this, what we're calling helicopter parenting. Anyone know that phrase?
Yeah.
A few of you know what that means. So what does a helicopter do? For those who don't know, it hovers. It hovers. And so parents who are helicopter parents are hovering over their children, making sure that life is better for them. Right? We want to make sure that you don't have to go through all the pain and the drama and the things that I went through, so I'm going to take care of you and protect you from all of that. And what have we done to our children as a result?
Not let them learn.
We don't let them learn, right? It's caused them to be emotionally debilitated, stunted, so to speak. That is one of the theories, at least as far as young people go. Then there is this idea, I kind of summed it all up, analog needs in a digital age. So our analog needs, I'm going to say those are our heart needs. Those are our needs for connection. Those are our needs for being with other people in face-to-face and communicating with folks. And we live in a digital age where everything is at your fingertips and most people are communicating via social media. Maybe not most, but a lot of folks are communicating via social media. In this age in particular. So they're used to text messaging and not having actual conversations with people.
Gosh, there's text anymore. It's just a little emoji.
Yeah, now Donna's saying it's not even text so much as little emojis that they're sending to one another. And I don't know about you, but I know that I learned personally better being in a room with people, you know, face to face. It's a whole other thing than when you're online with folks. And what happens with people, they're on Instagram and they're on Facebook and Snapchat and all of these things. And what we're seeing is everybody's highlight reel. Right? You're seeing the best of people's lives. You're seeing what they want to show you, and everything is so wonderful. And you see beautiful pictures of their vacations and their kids, and everything looks so perfect. And you look at your life and think, what the heck? What's wrong with me? Why don't I have that kind of life? Why can't I look like that? And so we're continually comparing ourselves to these images that aren't even real. That aren't even real. Think about the media. How many things are photoshopped? I mean, you're hardly ever seeing what somebody really looks like anymore. Because you can remove blemishes, you can put filters on, you can make them slimmer. You know, there's all kinds of things we can do. But people are comparing themselves to this unreality, this ideal that isn't real. And that may be a big part of it. Then there's this thing, and I think this is something that has been forever. This is not a new thing in our digital age, but it's the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. And so maybe our kids don't say that. They don't use that phrase, but they use this other one, FOMO. Anybody heard that one? I heard that this weekend, FOMO. That is fear of missing out. Right? The need to keep up with the Joneses and the fear of missing out. Everybody else is having this wonderful life. Again, what's wrong with me? Now, the reason I think that this one is just part of our human nature is because I see my grandsons. And my grandsons hate to go to sleep. Right, daughter? Mm-hmm. Much like their mother. Because I might miss something.
Grandmother.
The grandmother, yeah, the grandkid's grandma, yes. You know who I'm talking about, me. It's like there's so much life to live, there's so much to do. I want to get as much as I can out of it, you know, so it creates this tension and feeling like I just don't want to miss out on anything, you know. I've got to do it all, and I've got to pack it all in today. And I believe that is causing stress for folks. Maybe some people grow out of it. I'm just owning up to it. I don't think I have.
No, we don't.
No, we don't grow out of it. Okay, so anyway, that being what it is, if that is what it has always been, and that's what it is, then that's probably not adding to those statistics, but that's just my personal thought about it. It seems to be a new thing. So anyway, possible causes. So what do we do about it? What can we do about it? And maybe you see yourself in some of that. You may not be 18 to 22. You may not be in college. But again, I think that this is just symptomatic of what's going on in the larger whole. The thing is, universities are places where they study this, and they have groups of people that they can study. So it's easy. But I think these young folks are really just indicative of what's going on in the rest of our society. And pick another group, pick veterans. You know, do you think they're faring any better than our college students? Probably worse. Probably worse. Look at senior citizens, right? With all of the, health issues and anxiety. Are we going to have enough money? Am I going to have people to take care of me, as I get older? It's everywhere. It's just all throughout our culture and our society. And the truth of the matter is, we really can't change anyone else, right? We can't change the way anybody else processes information or their understanding of things. I can't, as much as I want to take care of my kids and make sure that their lives are the best that they can be, and my grandchildren, I don't have the capacity to do that. None of us do. I'm responsible for me, as are each one of you. I'm going to invite you all. Look at a neighbor and say, I am responsible for my life.
I am responsible for my life.
And I'm not responsible for yours.
And I'm not responsible for yours.
Right? We can only change ourselves. So, is there a possibility that maybe you could stand to lighten up a little bit?
Yeah.
Somebody called me intense the other day.
I think that's a compliment.
I had never heard that. No one ever said that to me, and I had to step back and think about it. Like, I guess maybe I am a little intense sometimes. Maybe I need to back down, So 7 signs that you might need to lighten up. Number 1, if you think your accomplishments are never enough. Are you always chasing after that something better? Trying to get another degree, trying to make more money, having a nicer house, and it just somehow is just never feeling like you're good enough. You're just never measuring up quite enough. I won't ask you to raise your hands. Can anyone relate to that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. How about this one? You're continually second-guessing yourself, which goes back to the, feeling not good enough or never enough. Right? Did I do it right? Did I do enough? Did I do it better? The next one. You devalue your own successes and abilities. I make it a habit of complimenting people. When I see someone do something really well or really beautiful, or I see just, they have this talent that I don't have, and 9 times out of 10, they'll just brush it off. Like, it's no big deal. It's nothing. But we all have our unique talents and abilities. And sometimes it's hard to own that, or even hard to see it, or acknowledge it. Other people may see it, but you can't see it for yourself. So accepting it, right? Don't devalue your successes. If somebody tells you you're really good at something, or compliments you, learn how to take it. I think Marion spoke about that last week as well, didn't she? You frequently compare yourself to others. Well, that's what we just talked about, right? Comparing ourselves and our lives to what everybody else is doing, or what we think other people are doing, right? What we think is the reality that more often than not is not. You don't take risks. You're staying in that box, because you're afraid. How many of us are? People are afraid these days. We don't want to take risks. How many people I've talked to that don't want to travel now? So you waited all of these years to be in your golden years and have the money to be able to travel, and then not do it because some terrible thing might happen to you while you're overseas. Right? So you don't want to take the risks. Or somebody might compare you badly, say, you've always wanted to sing, but I can't do that. It might not sound real good. I didn't sing for probably, 25 years. I sang when I was a kid. I stopped when I was a teenager because of some of that stuff, feeling like I wasn't good enough, and all those stories I told myself. It wasn't until I came in here, into this space, and I was watching the choir and thought, I kind of like to do that. And the first time I did, my knees were knocking. And even with that, it still took some years of doing it fairly regularly to be able to just lighten up and just enjoy it. So we don't take risks. How about this one? You're critical of others. I heard that. You're critical of others. When you're pointing the finger this way, how many are pointing back at you? Right? How many are pointing back at you? That's probably a good a good signal that you need to lighten up if you're finding yourself being critical of other people. And then the last one, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand for this one. Any of you keep yourselves awake at night? Thinking about your problems, the worries, what's going on in the world, like all of these things that are happening. I hear that often of people you just keeping yourself up all night worrying. And what good is all of that worrying doing you? Zero. Because it's not changing anything. Worry doesn't change a darn thing. How many of you get that? Do you really get that? I mean, there are some people, I come from a family where like worrying is a thing. You know, if you're not worried about me, then you obviously don't care. Like you have to be as miserable as everybody else who's worried, or it seems like you just don't care. You know, I refuse to play that anymore. So we had the 7 signs that you may need to lighten up, and here are some ways to actually do that, and they're really going to be pretty self-evident. I do love this quote, though. Strive for progress, not perfection. Isn't that great? If you're a little better today than you were yesterday, you know, that's progress. Pat yourself on the back, you know. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Number 2, do something light. Do something fun. And by light, you know, whatever it is that brings you joy, go home and put on some comedies. I don't know. I invite my kids and the grandchildren over, and we just have a show. We let the kids do their thing, and we watch and we laugh and we have a great time, right? Just do something easy, joyous, light. Give yourself permission to do that. Give yourself permission to fill in the blank, whatever that is for you. I can't tell you how many times over the past 2 months I've gone home and I think, oh, I really just love to just unplug, you know, maybe just take a nap, or, you know, go play something, and I'm like, but I don't have time. I have to get this thing done. I have to get that thing done. I have to be productive. I only have so many hours, and there's so much that I have to do. And I was not giving myself permission to have fun, to just play. You know, and it's the idea of sharpening the saw. How many of you know that analogy? Right? You know the story that the guy somebody's in the forest and he's cutting down trees and he's working so hard and he's sweating and he's like really having a hard time. And this other guy comes by and he's like, well, your saw is dull. Why don't you sharpen it? He's like, but I don't have time. I don't have time to sharpen the saw, right? So the job takes you 10 times as long because you don't take time to sharpen the saw. How do you sharpen the saw for yourself? Right? What is it that recharges you? What is it that recreation that recreates you? And give yourself permission to do that. Adopt the serenity prayer. How many of you know that? Yeah? Do y'all know the serenity prayer? I will say it. I always miss it at the beginning. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, another version I've heard is very similar. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know that it's me. How many of you have heard that version? That goes back to, I'm responsible for my life and not yours. Give gratitude. Give gratitude. Thank you, Patricia, for your beautiful talk a couple of weeks ago that was about living from heart-centered gratitude. If people say it all the time, and it is the absolute truth, I know it from working with people in the prison and from all different walks of life, that when you come from a space of gratitude, your life changes. If you adopt one spiritual practice, if it's just one, if you said one prayer, let it be a prayer of thanks. Start the practice of giving gratitude for something every day. Before you go to bed at night, when your head hits that pillow, run through your day and think, what do I have to be grateful for? And those moments when you feel like, I can't really think of anything right now, those are the moments when you need to do it most. You know, think about what you would miss if you woke up tomorrow and didn't have it. That's something you could be grateful for. Yes, Donna?
give gratitude when you can't think of anything to think about. Say, I give gratitude for the fact that I have a brain, that I can't think about anything to give gratitude.
There you go.
Because coming from a nurse standpoint, there's some people whose brain does not work anymore.
Did y'all hear that? I'll say it for our virtual audience, that if you can't think of anything to be grateful for, give thanks that you can think about giving thanks. That your mind is functioning enough that you can do that, because there are people who don't even have enough function of their mind to be able to do that. Right? I mean, it can be really, really basic, right? That you can think, that you can see, that you can speak, that you're living without pain, whatever that thing happens to be. Live in gratitude. And if you really want to make it a practice, you write it down. And I would encourage you to write down 3 things every day that you're grateful for. And the next day, you write down 3 different things. And the next day, you write 3 more different things. Because we know that where we put our attention and what we focus on is what grows in our awareness. So if you are looking for things to be grateful for, what's going to happen? There's going to be more of it. There is going to be more to be grateful for. This one, I love this. Take the long view. When you're feeling like things are getting too heavy, right? When things are getting too hard, when you're feeling like you're really intense, really stressed, you take the long view. Is this really going to matter 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now? When I'm taking that last breath, is this the stuff that people are going to care about? Right? That my house is clean, that I looked perfect, that I lost that last 10 pounds. Take the long view of your life, really. Really, there was a book, I don't know, back in the 70s or 80s, like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And by the way, it's all small stuff. Keep perspective. And then this last one I think is so important, is remembering who you really are. Right? That our teaching, this month in January, February, we're really talking about the basics of what this whole teaching is, this thing we call science of mind. And so I've got a passage I want to read for you. But remembering who you are. Great. Now, Marion said this last week too, and I love this analogy. Are we cells in the body of God? Are we cells in the body of God? She said that. Now look at some of those pictures. The first one, at the top there says the birth of a cell. The one next to it is the death of a star. At the bottom there is a brain cell. And the other picture is a universe. And then this one is somebody's eye. And this is a nebula. Isn't that interesting to think? Are we really cells in the body of God? Right? So some of us may be brain cells, some of us are heart cells. I like to think I'm a heart cell. Some may be liver cells, some may be intestines, right? We need all of it. And those of you who think you're the brain, that's all wonderful, yes. But if the sphincter says nothing's leaving here, the whole thing shuts down. And what happens if some group of cells says, I'm out of here. I don't want to play with you all anymore. I don't like this. This isn't working for me. I'm going to go do my thing. What happens? Really, in your body? Do you know sometimes, there are groups of cells that will do that? They go rogue. They go rogue, and they turn on your body, and it turns into autoimmune disease where your body is fighting itself, right? Or another group says, hey, I'm taking over. I'm doing this. And they multiply really fast, and we call those things cancer, right? And then it takes down the whole body, right? They think, I can do my thing for a little bit for myself. I just care about me. But what does it do? It takes down the whole system. It's self-destruction. Are we cells in the body of God? I think maybe we are. You see, here is, I'll just read this for you. This comes from the introduction, from the foreword to the book, to the Science of Mind, which is this one, which is the philosophy that we teach here at the Center for Spiritual Living. And this comes from Jean Houston, who wrote the foreword to the book. She says, if I was to state the teaching of the Science of Mind, it would be that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We are, therefore, the lensing of God's stuff on earth the focalization of eternity and time. So think about that. What happens when you focalize something? To focalize, to bring it to focus, like a laser beam takes all of this light and focuses it, and it becomes very, very powerful because of that focus. So that's what we are. Each one of us is the focalization of God energy in time and space right here, right now. Consciously or unconsciously, we direct the flow of universal mind into form. This grants us tremendous power, and with it the innate responsibility to make or break our world through the extraordinary working power of our minds. Right? Change your thinking, change your life. That's what we teach here. Thus, the practical emphasis in the science of mind of schooling ourselves in the The practical emphasis in the science of mind of schooling in the power of trained thought. Right? That's what we do here, is we teach people how to train, how to discipline their thoughts through various practices, right? Through prayer and meditation and through awareness, journaling. There's all kinds of practices that we do to school our mind in the power of trained thought. So much of our ordinary thinking lapses into habitual patterns with little variation from one day to the next. Our lives mirror this and fall into serial monotony, interrupted by episodes of trouble, panic, and loss. This reminds me of the quote from Thoreau that says, "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation." Right? And when you're not in that quiet desperation, it becomes loud desperation. And that's a lot of what we're seeing. We live then as limited, crippled versions of who and what we are, suffering the continuous of emotional plagues and toxic thoughts, and the world then reflects this tragically. Isn't that what we're seeing? Right? We think that people out there need to change, but the only place we can change is right here. In contrast, the science of mind takes seriously the dictum of being recreated through the renewing of our minds. And not just our minds, but our bodies and souls as well. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this movement, seemed to anticipate the world of the new millennium with its compounding of factors unique to the human experience. How can we deal with a world in the throes of whole system transition in which everything we've ever known is changing at so rapid a pace that we're caught between the dangers that threaten us and the opportunities that beckon us? Now, doesn't that sound like it was just written like this week for what we're going through? This was actually written in 1997.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, I will. How can we deal with a world in the throes of whole system transition in which everything that we've known is changing at so rapid a pace that we're caught between the dangers that threaten us and the opportunities that beckon us? Educated for the demands of a different time and culture, that we are all educated for a different time and culture, we are called to be re-educated to use much more of ourselves in meeting the many new challenges that confront us. We have no choice then but to democratize greatness and utilize the whole continuum of human and divine potential. I want to read that one again because I think that's just such a beautiful thing that she says here. We have no choice but to democratize greatness. Realize that we are democracy, right? All of us great. We all have greatness within us. We are all called to live that greatness and to help pull it out of others. Help people remember that for themselves. We have no choice then but to democratize greatness and utilize the whole continuum of human and divine potential. The science of mind says that this is not only possible, it is what is expected of us. Indeed, it is for that which we have been created. These are the times, and we are the people. Wow. Christina said, whoa. Oh, yes, yes. These are the times, and we are the people. I chose that image intentionally as well, because it's called the DNA helix. So it looks like the DNA that's in your body, and it's also a nebula. I think they call it a double helix nebula, or something like that. Again, are we cells in the body of God. Each one of us having our own specific role, our own thing to do. And it doesn't matter what anybody else's thing is. What matters is what is yours to do, and that you bring that forth.